So today, I'd like to take a step back and look at what I would do with Donald if he were coming to me as a client. Usually, when someone joins my program, I like to say, "What is happening for you right now?" And if he were one of my clients, he might say, "Panda, I'm trying to win an election this year." So, what we do is we open up his nightstand journal, his guide for the year, and we look at what is happening, and I point out certain portals that are key to what may drive how he might go about achieving this and the energy associated with all of that, what he might be feeling essentially during the year. So let's take a look. I'm going to share my screen, and again, here is his chart without portals showing on it. And here we go with all of the portals for this year, all of the astrological portals. Maybe you're familiar with the Mercury retrograde. Well, these all show on here. Let me give you an example. For example, the Mercury retrograde that we are currently going through is right here. I talked about how he is thinking about having that Leo energy of shining and not being embarrassed in these collective situations, in his rallies, in his places where people gather and try to get on the same page. And he's trying to do that. And that Virgo portion of this portal is about stepping away, because it's right here at the ascendant, and he steps underneath, steps away from the crowd to realize what he needs to do to make it perfect, to make him perfect or beautiful. And you'll hear that phrase from him quite a bit. But this is sort of in the moment, and some of the bigger transits are these ones in red, which talk about the bigger energies of the year for him. So one of the first things I look at is, what is Pluto doing? What is his main intention, his New Year's resolution, you might say, for the year? And here it is, here in Capricorn, and a tiny bit, half a degree in Capricorn, 2 degrees in Aquarius. And this is in his 5th and 6th areas of life. His fun, what he does easily, so a lot of Capricorn there and a tiny bit of Aquarius, of creating structure and having rules, and then pointing out what's wrong with them. This is fun for him. This is easy for him to create rules and then begin to change them. And part of this, as I said, is in his 6th area, or his 6th house, his house of his daily life. And this is about doing things differently, pointing out what's wrong, what's different, going forward, frankly, for the rest of his life, for the rest of everyone's life. And this is happening whether he's moving with it or not. So this means that the energy that he is stepping into this year is to do something completely different, that is almost letting go of all the structures that he used to have previously. So that would suggest to me that if he were to win the election, he would need to do it in a way that the structure of his daily life would be unlike anything he's ever done. It would mean that his presidency would be completely different, and that a lot of the rules that he would have would be thrown out the window. The previous rules would be thrown out the window, and we'd be starting fresh, so to speak. And that is something I would say would need to be in his head, is to do things differently than he had done them before. So that's one thing. It could also be, if he were to lose the election, a completely different life than he is used to. And we have had hints of that this spring, and that is another possibility. None of these things are written in stone. So that's one. Another thing to look at for him is what kind of growth is he experiencing this year? And the Jupiter portal just opened on July 15th. And this is about expanding his mind, expanding his awareness. And this is in his 10th area. And it is about his impact on the world, making his mark on the world through using his words, his ideas, his mind. And that is expanding this year from July 15th until the end of April. And notice that it is crossing over, it's a little hard to see, both his Uranus and his north node. And so it's expanding his different way of thinking, his different way of communicating. It is also expanding his choices, his way of deciding, more opportunities perhaps to make that choice, to use his, I'm going to say discretion, but that's not quite it, but the opportunity to go with the details and go with the ideas in his head, kind of almost what pops into his mind and just letting it come out. And that will be expansion here. Now, notice that this Jupiter portal goes from 11 to 21 degrees. And if you're interested, I can dive in deeper. But it does not hit his sun, which is at 22, almost 23 degrees. So the growth he is experiencing from now until next May does not include his sun. What he does will not be expanding until next May. So that to me potentially indicates that, okay, Donald, if you were a client, that you should not expect to have more things to do, to have more opportunities to speak, to actually use that that ability to mindfully act through your mind. And so that might suggest that the winning the election is not part of his growth this year. If his sun were in that portal, I'd say, oh, maybe. But this doesn't mean it doesn't. It just means that, gives you pause a little bit about that growth. What else do I see? Uranus. How is he restructuring the way he shows up? Now, notice that it is at the very top of his chart. And the portal itself goes from 23 to 27 degrees of Taurus. And his midheaven is at 24 and a half. So it's right in the middle there. And what this means is the way he is being seen, the way he makes his impact on the world, begins to make his impact on the world, is shifting. And how could that be? His presence might be, it can happen in two ways. I think it could be that if he were able to change the rules so that his presence is seen differently than what has been seen in the past. So, for example, if things that he had been found guilty of were reversed in some way, or charges were dropped, or things were not pursued, it would be as though he was able to change the way things work. And that is a possibility. The other possibility, and we saw a hint of this in the spring, is that people start to see him differently. They look at his presence and they classify him as something before, and it has shifted from here on forward to something different. And of course, that could mean time in prison. It could be time unable to do the things to make his mark the way he is used to doing. So that is another indication, possibly, that it might be difficult for him unless he does something radically different to in the way he shows up to actually win the election. What else do I see? Well, this Mars portal is about putting our heart into something. And for him, it will be taking charge and putting his heart and committing to using his instincts and being proud of himself in his groups and a little bit in that collective emotion, in that space where he is trying to get everyone together. So this will be a big, big push for him. And notice that there are two tools here, his Saturn, his discretion, and his Venus, what he appreciates. And pushing for his rules and pushing for what he likes from about October 9th until May of next year. And this, again, is a three-part experience. And the first part obviously covers the election. And the question is whether this kind of fresh pushing on his rules and on what he likes means a whole fresh start to a new set of rules and a new experience of what he likes compared to what he has had, or potentially being fought on that. So hard to say exactly how this turns out. Nothing is predetermined. But these are some of the things that I would point to in counseling him and in saying, what is the possibility of winning this election? There are these other portals as well. Happy to talk about those. Let me know what you think. And let me know what questions you have.